All right, the Baroque in Italy and Spain. We touched a little bit on Spain for the first time, and now we're going to move into a new period of art called the Baroque. And in Italy, really we're seeing art that's getting produced, as propaganda, but to reclaim dominance by the Catholic Church. I talked a little bit about the Reformation. It started, and so we have this split that's going on. So you want to also show that your belief in God is better, more powerful than the other belief in God. So there's a little bit of that that's going on. And this style, this Baroque style, was used to influence the viewer of the church's message, and it focused a lot sort of on the theatrical. And I put some Baroque music in there too, so you can see sort of like how it is. And what's funny about this painting is that, and it's not in your book, but this painting is painted from that period, from the Baroque period, but it shows instruments that are completely new for the Baroque era at the time. So you look at this and you say, oh, okay, that's a horn, that's a violin, that's a cello and stuff, but you wouldn't have seen those in the music before. And now this style of horn, of course, we don't even use. So it's really interesting how the two are sort of growing together. So there's some music for you, and that's why that painting is there, just to show that symbolic gesture. But yeah, starting in the 1600s and continuing throughout the 17th century in Europe was this movement, and the term has had a lot of speculation. Maybe its meaning is kind of like the Portuguese meaning pearl, but no one really knows where the term Baroque comes from. It was sort of a derogatory statement because it was defying classical and Renaissance ideas. So there's some speculation maybe that's where the term come from, but it did focus on drama and complexity, right? Artists were looking at dynamism, they were looking at the theatrical, the abundance of ornamentation that you're going to see in these works is off the charts. And then, of course, the scale grew in proportions. So to give you some examples, right, we have some architecture that we'd actually seen this dome before. It's created by Michelangelo. And so when this was commissioned, the artist was actually so upset about Michelangelo that they went ahead and kind of covered him up a little bit. So just from the perspective, you're not able to see all the way there. It's not actually covered up, but the facade that's there, that's why it exists. But anyway, this is the symbolic seat of the papacy. So when you go to the Vatican, you think of Pope, right? The Pope was rebuilding St. Peter's from the original St. Peter's that was from the Gothic era, and it's been going on for an entire century. So this style is Baroque in style, but several artists were used in the project, and that's why like Michelangelo's dome built so long before this, and now you have this one later. Inside of churches, though, and this is not inside the Vatican, and in fact, it's a smaller chapel closer to the Vatican, more close to the Spanish Steps if you ever get to go to Rome. But this sculpture sort of gives you an idea of what Bernini, the artist who did this, what they're thinking of and why they were turned Baroque. So it's not that he just designed this, it's the entire facade. And we even see these carved spectators in. So, definitely theatrical, but he chose the marble, the inlays, everything to create this. So really, yes, this is the work, but in order to make the setting for it, here you go. So it's an altarpiece. There is even a little window up above, so natural light comes down. That's why we're actually seeing light come down there, but it's hidden, so it looks divine in many ways. But this work really personifies the Baroque movement, and the video about it is great. Shows you a lot of great angles. It's inside the Cornaro Chapel. Like I said, it's set up like a theatrical stage, and it uses elements of sculpture, painting, and architecture in the design of it. What we see here is St. Teresa passing out and having a vision after the death of her father. And this vision is this arrow, right, that pierces her heart several times and supposedly fills her with divine love. And from there, she's converted to a Christian. And so this is that moment. This is sort of her testimony of like how that came about. And the entire design of the chapel is used to frame the work. The frescoes, the ceiling depicts heavens. You can't see that here, but there's just more and more work all around this. It has, images of saints and angels, the sculptures of the family, the patrons, the cardinal, or they're the ones on the viewing on the side here that we're seeing is that, just like in other paintings, we see the patrons on the side. Lots of different colors of marbles, and just absolutely beautiful. One of the most interesting artists in the Baroque period is Caravaggio, Michelangelo Merci, also known as Caravaggio. And, very much like the original Michelangelo, also a character with shady background. He was, to many at this time, they called him the Antichrist of painting because he was so outspoken against the classical masters. That he already knew more than them, that he could paint better than them, but they didn't understand, and But he, very shady life, was run out of many cities. Was talented enough to always win patronage, but then at the same time, his lifestyle lost. In fact, he was supposedly killed another man, and therefore had to leave the city at midnight. Otherwise, he himself would have been captured and probably either killed or put in prison for life. So, just very interesting character. Very known for painting his lovers, and of younger boys, really. And so, usually his paintings are of that. But when we have these sort of pieces, we see that dynamism, that theatricality, that light, right, that seems to be spotlighting them as if they're on a stage. These pieces are also used to decorate chapels, and when you go inside the chapels, they're fairly dark on purpose, so that way you have to put a coin into this box, which turns on the light. So not only do you have to pay a tithe, it's a way that the church gets to show off their work, but it pays a tithe to them. So it's really kind of funny. When I went to Rome and had to keep putting coins in, and the best thing to do is to wait for another tourist to come in, and they put their coins in, and then you all run up to it and take photos. So. A follower of Caravaggio's, in fact, if you looked at this, you'd think it was Caravaggio, is Artemisia Gentileschi, and she really rewrites history for women. In fact, this summer was a retrospective show of her work. She is very well known. She is definitely well respected in the art world, and even at this time, she's got patronage and stuff. So she's the most celebrated female artist of her time. She is also taught by her father. This is from the story of the Book of Judith about how Israel was freed. Judith, who is a Jew, sort of approaches the Syrian captain and says, hey, and he's like, okay, and then, kills him. And is able to sort of free her people that way. She's not the only female working at the time, but this is the first woman ever admitted to the Florence Academy of Design. So she definitely makes her name for herself, and the fact that she was admitted, I couldn't imagine, trying to go through the hoops. But so she was treated and paid less, though, by her patrons for her talent because she was a woman. So it just kind of shows you that still there's prejudice about it. But incredible works. To show you a little bit more of the theatrical, and this is, a small scene that I, up here is cut out from right here, and this is a fresco, right? So this ceiling does not extend beyond this arch, right? That's the end of the ceiling, if you can imagine, but they painted it as such, right? So we're playing on the theatrical works. We see this the ceiling that becomes increasingly larger, and this style really becomes popular. And not only those who had own the homes loved it because it implied more space, but it gave artists even more freedom to play around with not only the space but what they can imply. These ceilings are also designed for sound. They were supposed to be they were designed for the most ultimate places to play music. So And because of that, there's this idea of like emphasizing the glory of God all put together, right? If this is a sacred space and you have this ceiling that's going to make the music sound even better, and the ceiling that truly ascends visually into heaven, then yeah, I mean, these places were very popular. Now Spain, and we're going to definitely even jump continents here, but what Spain has touched, that's what we're going to look at. And we're looking a lot at these new holdings that these countries have claimed. And by the mid-1600s, we see a decline. The taxes are being raised. There's war. And so Spain itself is going to hit a little hardship. But art was still commissioned, though, during this time. And so once again, if you don't want to show that you're poor or broke, so you're just going to keep dishing out money. And that's pretty much what they were doing. But there's a lot of paintings and painters for Spain, but the one we're going to focus on is Velázquez. And another, he was highly copied by Picasso, another sort of, artistic genius ahead of his time. And, this sort of painting shows some of the mystery behind him. And it's called Maids of Honor. So we were immediately drawn to attention of, okay, here's what looks to be, daughters are getting prepared for something. But then we look at the other characters in it, right? We have, not for any term specific, but an individual that has what looks like dwarfism. We have this dog that, if you can't really see, there's some of the shot is actually being kicked by one of the girls on the side. We have what looks to be maybe the parents here. We have a mirror, though, with two other people in it. So if the mirror is then us, right, then we are these two people watching Velázquez paint this large piece right now. If he was painting these, he would be turned around. So he's definitely looking at the two people that are reflected here in the mirror, which must be the king and queen. But he's hiding all these interesting symbols around. And I encourage you to watch the YouTube video to get even more of it. But he used what was called tenebrism, which is a very dark style of painting. He learned this in Italy, and it really inspired him, sort of a very Caravaggio-esque way of painting, where we have lots and lots of dark scenery, and then the subjects come out in light. He was pushing boundaries, though, as what could be depicted for patrons in a church, right? He's trying to do as much of what he wants to do with what they are giving him. Architecture, this is in Peru, right, where Spain has made its mark. And so just to kind of show, this is what they're building. They're very lavishly decorated. They kind of have a little bit of Gothic style to them, but a lot of these, though, I just expressed, they were built on native sites, native temple sites. So they're seeing conquest being shown at its core. And mostly what would happen is, after conquest, these are usually pyramidal structures, and they would be torn down, and then the stones would be recycled to build a church. And on a lot of these, you can even still see early native people's carvings on them.